Okay, it's the end of February, and this month I managed to read 5 books, which is quite an accomplishment given the amount of work I had to do. Clearly a lot of sacrifices were made, but anyway, before that I have new makeup. I tested it all out at once, and now I look like an alien. I don't even know if the colors are entirely visible from here, but hopefully they are. Okay, so the first book that I read this month was Stories of Your Life and Others, which was then rebranded to become Arrival. Arrival meaning that movie about the aliens. That's basically what everyone remembers Arrival as, because it was a good movie. I enjoyed it personally. This is not the only short story inside this collection that was good. Actually, my favorite story inside this collection was probably the one that was set in Babylon. So if you've read the Bible, or if you have been around the Jesus fandom for any amount of time, you will know this super famous Old Testament story about how man wanted to pierce the heavens, so they built this tower, and then God was like, "You're so arrogant," and he struck them down, and then he made it such that everybody couldn't speak the same language anymore, so that they couldn't come together to, I guess, find him. I remember when I first heard this story in church, I was like, hey, that's very relatable. If somebody tried to look for me where I live, I was pretty sure I too would strike them down and make them leave me alone. So perhaps God is a bit of an introvert. That story was very good. Anyway, all of his stories are actually very good because they are always based on something that is possible, but obviously it's not possible, so I guess that makes it plausible. He takes this plausibility and then he goes all the way with it. He completely imagines new worlds, new laws of physics, new everything. For example, another one of my favorite stories inside is the one where he explores the concept of the golem. So the golem is like, you know, you play Maple Story, then there is the stone golem, right? So the golem is like animated clay or animated stone, except how do you animate it? You give it a name. So this story clearly is about the power of nomenclature, and like the world building is just incredible. So I really enjoyed this book. This book is a clear 5-star book to me. Alright, the next book that I read, as I said, I would read this because this was a Christmas present from my friend. It's obviously based on the one and only Medusa. There are pictures inside. Let me look for it. So for example, over here, you have a picture of Perseus. So you got a picture of Medusa. It's text. The rest of it is text, and it's like very good quality glossy paper. It's a fancy book. I don't know how else to call it. It is a fancy book. It's actually a retelling of the story of Medusa. So Medusa over here is not portrayed as some like evil woman. She's just portrayed as a girl who was honestly stalked and harassed by the god Poseidon, and afterwards she was punished for it by Athena. We all know that Athena is like, for lack of a better word, she's a huge bitch. This is canon. She's canonically a huge bitch. There's no such thing as like a good Athena, a kind Athena, a feminist Athena, an Athena who champions women's rights and, you know, their safety. No. Athena only cares about like her pet favorite, and her pet favorites are always men because she kind of feels like women are not very smart. It just seems a bit like her internalized misogyny is very strong, which then makes me wonder, can you even say that she is a she? I don't know. I feel like regardless of who it is who tries to re-portray Athena, she just gives very strong like woman-hating vibes. Yeah, she just hates women. She hates anyone who's prettier than her. She hates anyone who can do anything better than her. No, she is not a sister of the cause. So Athena over here continues on in that tradition of being a huge misogynistic bitch. Instead of following the so-called traditional or original rendition of the myth, wherein she gets slayed by Perseus, who then sort of mounts her head into a shield, she actually successfully turns him into stone at the end. And after that, even though obviously Medusa and Perseus are meant to have some kind of a romantic romantic connection, eventually she realizes that him being born of a woman who has experienced the same trauma as her does not make him an ally, it does not make him understanding, and it does not make him suitable. At the end of the day, he is a man, he behaves like a man, he can only think about himself. It's not that the Perseus here is like a clear-cut villain. In fact, I think that we are given many opportunities to feel sympathy for him, but his redemption arc never comes, and the overarching theme at the end of the day is that of sisterhood. So I really enjoyed it. Thank you, Kin, for the book. Next, I read 2 more books over Libby. I haven't had a chance to get hard copies of them, even though I want hard copies of them because they're so good. Both of them are by Natalie Haynes. So the first one that I read, simply because it was the first one in the list that popped up on Libby when I typed in her name, was 1,000 Ships by Natalie Haynes. And this book apparently like won a bunch of prizes. This book is like the big thing now, because what it does is that it tries to comprehensively retell the stories of every woman that was involved during the Trojan War. I'm not going to summarize the Trojan War to you, like this is probably like general knowledge, but if you even watched like any of those, could I call them bad, perhaps like cringy Hollywood remakes of the Greek myths, you will know that it's the Trojans versus the Greeks. However, on both sides there are women, and these women, they don't necessarily deserve the fate that was allocated to them. It really does try to give you the perspective of every woman in this sort of game, like every woman that was involved, every woman that was hurt, every woman that somehow had a role to play, whether big whether small. For example, Paris's wife, even she gets her own chapter. So I thought that she did a very good job of keeping each voice distinct while weaving them together using the overarching narrator, which is the Muse, which I'm assuming is Calliope. I hope I'm not butchering the name. The Muse in this book is not one that would simply bend her will to that of the poet. She only focuses on the women. I gave this like a 4-star because it was actually very good. It was good. It's just a bit heavy and it is depressing. There's no point in telling you that it's not, because it is. The next book that I read is also by her, and this book, Children of Jocasta, was actually written before 1,000 Ships. However, I felt that it was excellent. This is like a perfect, flawless book. I gave it a clear-cut 5 stars. Imagine my surprise when I found out that 1,000 Ships came later. So I guess she started small and then she was like, I can take on a bigger project, and then she took on a bigger project. Both are done well, but personally I prefer it when she focused on Jocasta and her youngest daughter, Ismene. Yeah, it should be Ismene. So there are many myths and versions of this story. This particular retelling chooses to make it realistic. So all the things that make it tragic, that make it inevitable, she takes them out. For example, there is no like magical sphinx terrorizing the city, eating people, and not letting you pass through her gates until you answer her riddles 3. No such thing. Like, there is no sphinx. In fact, the sphinx is just like a gang name. They're a bunch of bandits. If you are like a traveler traveling between kingdoms, you will most of the time end up encountering these bandits who either kill you or rob you, and these bandits are called the Sphinx. So they're just basically like organized gang activity. The second thing that has changed is that if you read the play, they made it seem like inevitable that Oedipus is Jocasta's son. But in this book itself, it is actually not so clear-cut. When he asked his parents about his parentage, they told him that they simply adopted him from a neighboring family who had too many children and they wanted children, so they took one child. That is it. On Jocasta's side, the wet nurse that sort of helped get rid of her newborn baby boy is actually very unreliable. Like, you can't tell whether she's just deliberately being malicious or she's actually telling the truth, which is that she did not save her son. And it doesn't check out, what? Because she didn't even save her own son when she was trying to help the king produce an heir. So why on earth would she save the son of somebody that she deemed her competitor in the eyes of the king? It doesn't check out. That's the second thing. The third thing that they changed was the suicide at the end. So originally early in the play, Jocasta and Oedipus, they have a very tragic ending. Jocasta comes to the realization that she really did marry her own son. Her son really did kill her husband, assuming she loves her husband, which in this book she does not. And then she sort of like hangs herself. How this author changed that story was that she made it an act of self-sacrifice, because one of the reasons why they started wondering if there was a problem in the royal family was because the entire city was suffering from a plague. This plague has been around since 60 years ago, so it's not like a new plague that shows up because the gods are displeased with you or whatever. The gods in this book don't make an appearance. There is no like Deus Ex Machina. There is no like clear-cut message from the oracle from Apollo who wanted you to really know that you messed up or anything. No such thing. The gods do not even speak. This plague, when it makes a comeback, that is when all the questions start coming in. Like, at no point in time are we given any sort of indication that it could be true. It's plausible, but not very possible. Jocasta, when she kills herself in the end, it's not because she realized that she really did marry her son, but it's because she realized that she caught the plague. That's why she decided to just end her life then. When I was reading it, right, all I could think about was that this plague sounded a lot like COVID if we were a bit less prepared for it, or if medical technology wasn't quite so advanced yet. It's a little uncanny to read about a plague during a real life plague. So overall, Children of Jocasta, it's a clear-cut 5-star read. I cannot recommend it enough. However, it is depressing. I will not lie to you, it is depressing, because reading about people dying of plague and everything is depressing, isn't it? To me. Why is my cat making so much noise? The last book I read, yes, book number 5, is Ariadne. In my head, Galatea was going to arrive before the end of the month, but it didn't, so it's okay. I guess I can read it next month. So I read Ariadne, which was a present from a friend for Christmas. It was also recommended to me by another friend, so I already had a lot to look forward to. In summary, this book is a 4-star read, which is actually pretty high because usually I give most books like a 3. If I didn't like it, it's a 2. If it pisses me off, it gets a 1. I think a lot of people probably already know the stories. This story is actually focusing specifically only on Ariadne and her younger sister, Phaedra. So you can see that the chapters intersperse. You get Ariadne, and then after that you get Phaedra. At its core, this book is a book about sisters who love each other very much, who are separated because of the actions of men who mistreat them, who use and abuse them, and how they end up dying tragically. Yeah. So there's no happy ending either. I mean, like, we are talking about retellings of myths that have existed longer than the Bible, right? I think it's very difficult to give a myth a happy ending if you are trying to keep to the theme, unless of course you are doing something more geared towards young adults, YA, then you can make it a happy ending. But the women in the myths do not really get happy endings. But that's not to say that there is no value in reading the retellings. I feel like the value comes from the imagining of their childhood, the imagining of how they ended up where they ended up. This book does that very well. Like, I never once thought that it would tell me so much about this one character, about her girlhood, about her relationship with her younger brother, the Minotaur, her relationship with her father, King Minos of Crete. Also, how come she would be so stupid as to believe Theseus, and how Theseus ended up marrying her younger sister, and how she ended up marrying the god of wine and debauchery, Dionysius. Can I even call him the god of that? I'm not so sure. The god of wine now. Okay, that one everyone can agree. It really goes in depth into her healing process. She grew up in fear under one man, and then when her brother grew up, she had to live in fear of him, her brother. After that, she was used and abused and abandoned by Theseus, another man. And then after that, she ended up with a guy who is not really a guy because he's a god, who kind of helps her heal. I know that sounds very like rom-com summary, but that is generally what happens in the book. At the end of the day, both sisters die. Maybe not through the direct actions of men themselves, but it's very hard to talk about a book and tell you what's good about it without giving it away. So I think that you should just go and read it on your own. Alright, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. High five. These are the books that I read this month. And next month, the month of March, I have no reading plans. I literally do not have any reading plans because I'm still drowning in work, and after I drown in work, I kind of want to take a break. I want to like go back to journaling. I want to like use the stationery that I bought but never had any chance to use because I was busy working, and I want to like get more sleep. So maybe I'll read like a book or two, but once the second quarter begins, I have a feeling that I'm going to be inundated again. Yeah, we'll see lah. Yeah, we'll see. I am keeping up with my reading goal of reading 50 books this year. So far so good. I'm not very worried about it. I think if like I fall behind, I can probably catch up in December. Anyway, 50 books is like a far cry, you know? Like last year I read 120 books. This year I'm deciding to be a bit kinder to myself. So 50 books, on average that's 1 book a week. I don't think like that's very unreasonable or very difficult for me lah, for me. Okay, so that's the end of my February book review. I will see you again maybe in a month's time. Bye.